Mario's passion never disappointed, even if his accent often left many wondering what he had just said. The Collective for Democracy was another more recent passion of Mario's, a concept I challenged long and hard before deciding that for me, multi-party democracy could be strengthened through these efforts. During the Fourth Parliament, Mario would often start conversations about whether or not there was life after Parliament and what that might look like. And on one occasion, the conversation started with, "So, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I never did take our banter too seriously, being a politician myself and Mario being a smooth-talking, confident, legally trained and politically minded Italian male. And I mean every word of that as a compliment. Now, however, I am sorry. Sorry for the times I made light of these topics. And sorry I brushed aside your attempts, Mario, to share your way too intellectual Bible knowledge with me. Mario's adoptive father, I'm told, was a leader of the Democrazia Cristiana, or Democratic Christian Party. Mario, however, spent his teenage political years as an activist under the wing of Marco Pannella, the leader of the Italian nonviolent, radical, environmentalist and libertarian movement, which, if true, explains a lot about Mario, I think. When Mario was undergoing treatment, I wanted to send him a copy of a book called The Shack, which has this amazing conversation with God in it. But he said, "Thank you, darling, but I will be healed and home at Christmas, and you can give it to me then." I did give it to him eventually, and I so hope that he did get to read it. Mario, I hope and I pray you did make peace with your Maker, and that there is a wonderful life for you after Parliament. It is on days like this that growing up is not an option, but a reality. Goodbye, friend and colleague. The journey of spiritual growth requires courage, initiative, independence of thought, and action. No teacher can carry you there. There are no preset formulas. Rituals are only learning aids. They are not the learning. No words can be said. No teaching can be taught that will relieve spiritual travelers from the necessity of picking their own ways, working out with effort and anxiety their own paths through the unique circumstances of their own lives towards the identification of their individual selves with God. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Nchaisa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, honorable members. As African Independent Congress, we would like to convey our heartfelt condolences to the family of Dr. Ambrosini. We know and we are aware that it's not always easy to accept death. But sometimes there are things that you cannot change in life. If, for instance, now we're made to be aware of our day on which one would die, I'm sure life now would be a mess and everyone would be serious in life. Dr. Ambrosini family should accept what cannot be changed. What is done is done. If I can just quote from the Exodus, everything has a reason. There is time for every purpose. There's time to be born and a time to die. There is time for peace and time for war. We have heard about the contributions that this great man has made to his family, to his friends, to his community, to the nation, and to this house in particular. It has been a great thing indeed. You know, I just want us to do away with the idea that Shakespeare says, I quote, "The evil that men do lives after them, and the good is often interred with their bones. Let it not be with this great man of our land." I think this great man will always be remembered for the good work that he has done for his country. Because we are aware that each and everyone that lives here would one day live for the better world. I hope now the contributions and everything that he has done will ever be remembered. Unlike Shakespeare, when it said those would be interred or buried with his bones. Ambrosini, his family, should just look up to the Lord, because he's the one that is going to make and comfort them. He's the one that is going to give guidance and advise them on what to do next, though it is difficult to accept. I always like now to quote from Shakespeare. When he talks about life, he says life is just a tale that is told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. It means life is just nothing, because after all, one has got to live. That we have got to accept. So we wish as AIC that may his soul rest in peace and be something of comfort to his family, friends, the nation, and everybody in this world. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Cody.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, comrades and honorable members. I wish to join the House in expressing our condolences to the Ambrosini family and those from his party, the IFP. The truism of your statement, Madam Speaker, just before we started with the condolences, cannot be overemphasized, that the passing away of a member of this House touches us all, irrespective of political affiliation or ideological persuasion. We have all come to know the late Honorable Ambrosini as a fierce and passionate articulator of his perspectives and beliefs. He was a man of strong convictions. In his battle with cancer, he showed a remarkable courage. His courage brought the challenge of cancer very much to the fore. He made us to confront the reality of cancer and our own vulnerability. Death is an unavoidable human destiny. However, whenever it occurs, nothing can prepare us for the pain and the sense of loss that accompanies it. We sincerely hope that those closely associated with him will find closure from this loss, and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development.
Deputy Speaker, honourable members, members of the Oriani-Ambrosini family. It is a sad day as today this House bids farewell to someone who was no ordinary politician. Dr. Mario Oriani-Ambrosini was larger than life in his energy and his expertise and his influence on South African politics. Dr. Oriani-Ambrosini could be very controversial. Arriving in South Africa in 1991, he immediately engaged in the constitutional debates of the day from the side of the Inkatha Freedom Party, drafting a constitution for KwaZulu-Natal in 1992. He was also, as Honourable Buthelezi has said, was involved in the passing of the Ingonyama Trust Act by the KwaZulu legislature shortly before the 1994 elections. Politically, his views were libertarian, advocating as little state involvement in the lives of citizens as possible. when I jokingly offered my condolences to him on Barack Obama's second election victory, he told me he'd lost interest in the American election campaign after his preferred candidate, Ron Paul, lost the American Republican primaries. Ron Paul is incidentally credited with a very conservative voting record in the American Congress. We in the African National Congress often crossed swords with Dr. Ambrosini, especially during the negotiations in the 1990s, and possibly even more so when the IFP threatened to pull out of the Constitutional Assembly, as well as in the negotiations for a provincial constitution for KwaZulu-Natal. More recently in Parliament, we often didn't see eye to eye on various pieces of legislation either. But despite our political differences, we in the ANC held him in high regard for his constitutional expertise and remarkable experience on governance matters. Just before this debate, the Minister of Human Settlements came up to me to tell me of her high regard for Dr. Ambrosini. She had spent quite a bit of time with him when she was Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, and he was advisor to the Honourable Buthelezi, who was then Minister of Home Affairs. He was highly respected as a fierce and outspoken debater, a seasoned negotiator, and a passionate politician. Whether or not one always agreed with him is not the point. The point is he always made a valuable contribution and he livened up debates. The Honourable Joan Fubbs, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry, probably said it best when she said, Dr. Ambrosini's fresh insight has contributed to more robust legislation. And as someone wrote in the media recently, he was one of the most hardworking people in the opposition benches, and he kept the governing party on its toes. I first met Mario in the mid-1990s when I was in the KwaZulu-Natal provincial legislature, which at that point was led by the Inkatha Freedom Party. And the IFP wanted a provincial constitution for KwaZulu-Natal. This process had assumed greater importance for the IFP when it withdrew from the Constitutional Assembly at a national level. Things were pretty intense at that time, and it then involved many nights of discussion after committee meetings at the Holiday Inn when the legislature was sitting in Ulundi. I spent more time with him when he became a member of the Justice and Constitutional Development Portfolio Committee in 2009, and in particular worked closely with him on the Protection of Personal Information Bill on a subcommittee together with Dean Smuts of the DA. From the ANC's side, we didn't always disagree. Last year, as the Justice Committee was debating the provisions of the Legal Practice Bill, we were discussing the issue of the high cost of legal fees. And the Honourable Ambrosini made the point that the cost of legal representation in South Africa is higher than in the United States capital of Washington, D.C. Never one to mince his words, he said it straight. He said, believing that lawyers would voluntarily make changes in the interests of the consumers of legal services was, and I quote, like putting the fox in charge of the chickens. That is how we shall remember him. Straight talking, sometimes controversial, never timid, always charismatic, always passionate about what he believed in. Indeed, Mario Ambrosini was no ordinary politician. He never did anything in half measure or in small steps. Reference has been made many times to the constitutional court case of Oriani-Ambrosini versus Sisulu, which declared certain rules of the National Assembly unconstitutional. In a discussion on the case, Professor Pierre de Vos aptly called it one small step for Parliament, one giant step for Ambrosini. But the fact that he lost that case in the Cape High Court and then had the tenacity to take it on to the Constitutional Court shows his tenacity and his belief in what he was doing. He was also a tenacious fighter, fighting a courageous battle against cancer. In May last year, he said that, and I quote, "I count on achieving a cure in 3 months and will then return to my parliamentary work if my gamble is successful. I plan to dedicate a great portion of my future political and professional life on the fight to eradicate cancer as a cause of death. If I fail, I hope that what I tried to do for democracy in South Africa and elsewhere will be appreciated," close quotes. He'd actually promised me a copy of, I think it was Cicero's speeches if he did succeed. Sadly, I'll have to buy that on my own. He's raised public awareness of cancer treatment, and his selfless campaign for innovative medical intervention will no doubt leave an indelible mark in the ongoing struggle against the disease. His work will be continued through the cancer treatment campaign, which he started earlier this year. Deputy Speaker, for him, death was inevitable. He sent me an SMS towards the end of April, which read, "My body is falling apart, but I am at peace and serene." In the Justice budget vote in July, he said, "I do not have much strength left. I know that there are other people with more strength than I do." He faced death bravely and decided to end his suffering at a time when he felt ready. He, not death, was to be the final decision maker concerning his fate. I think in this context, we also as a nation need to debate whether to legislate on the use of euthanasia in the context of terminal illness. We shall miss him in the various committees and in this House. The African National Congress wishes to express its sincere condolences to the family and friends of Mario Oriani-Ambrosini and to the Honourable Buthelezi and his colleagues in the IFP. To his wife, Karen, and 7-year-old son Luke, and his mother and other members of the family, you are in our thoughts, and may you find strength and solace in your time of mourning. I read a poem by Henry Scott Holland, and I thought of Mario while I was reading it, as it sounded like something he would have said if he were here. I'd like to share a few lines of the poem with the House. Death is nothing at all. I've only slipped away to the next room. I am I and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the trace of a shadow on it. Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. If he were here now, he would no doubt tease me about my Italian, but let me conclude and say to a dear colleague and friend, riposa in pace, or as we say, hambagatle. May his soul rest in peace and his memory will live on. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, that concludes the Speaker's list on this matter. I take it there are no objections to the motion being adopted. Will members please rise to observe a moment of silence in memory of the late Dr. Mario Oriani-Ambrosini. Thank you very much. You may be seated. The presiding officers associate themselves with the motion. The condolences of the House will be conveyed to the Ambrosini family. Members, before we proceed, may I also just apologize for the cell phone ring during the press. That's a bad neglect. The next item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? Honorable Gumede.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson, the ANC accepts the Constitutional Court ruling dismissing IEC Chairperson Penzin Tlakula's application for leave to appeal against an electoral court ruling against her. We hold the view that our freedom and democracy has accorded every South African a chance to tell his or her story, side of the story in a court of law, and to pursue any case or its outcomes in higher courts. Therefore, the ANC believes that Ms. Penzi Tlakula, like every other South African, also has that right to exercise her constitutional right to appeal the judgment and have a higher court review it. This is a principle that the ANC and millions of South Africans uphold. And that is why the ANC believes that a call for Ms. Tlakula to resign, even before she had had the opportunity to exhaust all court processes, as unconstitutional and undermines the rights that Advocate Tlakula has as a citizen of this free country. The ANC acknowledges the significant role the IEC chairperson, Penzi Tlakula, has played in bringing about free and fair elections, as well as the tremendous contribution she has made as the CEO of the IEC, which has accorded her an opportunity to be appointed the chairperson of the IEC. We believe that with her immense experience and outstanding achievements, both in her academic astuteness and work experience, she can still play a crucial role in the development of our society. I thank you.
Thank you. Can you call for the DA? Any statement from the DA?
House Chair, in visits to the Northwest and Limpopo this past weekend, I had the privilege of meeting individuals playing a catalytic role in improving healthcare. First, the CEO of Makopani's Voortrekker Hospital, Dr. Ramatoba, who, despite having a new wing unfinished for 4 long years, because the Provincial Public Works Department there is dysfunctional, as well as to constantly have to fight for medicines, including most recently Nevirapine, runs a fabulous hospital there. Secondly, the University of Limpopo's Dr. Francis Hayera, who, despite the fact that the provincial health authorities have not made the structural changes nor provided the specified medical equipment to the level of clinical isolation Ebola requires, developed a protocol and the initial training to staff. And thirdly, the CEO of the Klerksdorp Chapong Hospital, Mr. P.E. Mokatsani, who has made the hospital as Ebola ready as he can, but requires the urgent technical assistance from Dr. Aaron Matsaledi's ministry. The DA honors these 3 health leaders at the front line of care.
Thank you. EFF?
All right, that was, of course, the National Assembly paying their final respects to late IFP MP, Mr. Mario Ambrosini. Well, welcome.